So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is Doug Jury from Zadara, coming to you from beautiful Florida. We have a lot of different time zones involved here, so I hope everybody is finding their seat in the virtual classroom, or go grab yourself a cup of coffee or an iced tea, and we're going to let people continue to trickle into the classroom. Watching the attendee count go up, so I'm just going to wait just another minute or two, perhaps, as we get started. It's going to be a kind of a pretty exciting session that we have for you today. Complete OpEx edge solutions anywhere you need it. A lot of times we think about edge solutions and we say, well, it's probably going to be CapEx. It's probably going to be where I have to buy some equipment. But in this particular case that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about these edge solutions 100% as a service with our partner here, the Technology Depot. So we're just going to wait another few minutes while people continue to trickle in, and hope everybody's ready for a fun hour here. We've got a call to action at the very end, and so I hope everybody stays tuned for that, because we do want to offer you some promotions at the end of this whole session. So I'm going to continue to watch this. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and hit the go button. So again, my name is Doug Jury, and I'd like to introduce Brian Dean, also the president of the Technology Depot. So Brian, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Glad we can all be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let me go back one slide. Complete OpEx edge solutions anywhere you need it. Cloud Connect at the Switch data centers. A lot of people might have familiar with Switch in Las Vegas, or on premises, and that really is the key to this whole session as well today, is being able to really use the Switch data centers as well as your own data center going along. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to intro our two companies. What customers are saying. It's going to be kind of my clipping service for what I call what the heck is going on. And then we're going to introduce some cool products through Cloud Connect, hybrid cloud solutions, Z Compute, Z Storage, and then we'll talk a little bit about isolation as well. Then we're going to get into some use cases: edge config, secure, on-ramp for easy hydration, Veeam immutability, of course, a big one today as we move forward. So anyway, that's what I'm going to talk about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and he's going to talk a little bit about his company and some of their capabilities. So Brian, take it away.
Great. Well, once again, we appreciate everyone being here today. For those of you that aren't aware of the Tech Depot and our various services, we are a systems integration organization that also happens to deal with not only the premise side of the equation, but also the cloud side through our cloud service provider side of the business we call Cloud Connect Solutions. We're based here in the Los Angeles area, in Monrovia, California. We have offices in San Diego and Las Vegas. One of the reasons our Las Vegas facility is so key to us is we're adjacent to the Switch core campus there, which allows us to have direct response and be able to service that environment well. A lot of our customers are primarily California, Arizona, and Nevada based, although their organizations stretch definitely across the US and globally. We also have a special niche that we focus on, and that's hybrid cloud. When you think about clouds, we all hear the big public clouds, but a lot of times there's this in the middle of what do I do that doesn't go to public cloud. Could be related to applications you have that need to support older versions of OS, different types of things that people want to be able to have highly available, but more importantly, they're looking for high flexibility. So next screen there, Doug. So from that standpoint, as we brought up, Switch Las Vegas is a tier 5 exascale, and people say, well, what's exascale? And that's definitely massive in size, but more importantly, the type of services that are available there have very high uptime, are geared towards organizations of military grade security for the types of organizations that they're, whether it's your corporate data or whether it's government security. All those things go into making sure that the applications and the data that live there are highly secure, highest power redundancy and HVAC environment, so that everything is got basically a near 100% guarantee uptime. Connectivity to the world, over 50 fiber providers in that environment, so we can pretty much connect to any on-ramp, that's to any public cloud, in any other data center or to the prem location where you're at. Easily getting things from 100 megs and 1 gig and 10 gig type internet feeds to connect to any of your sites, and pretty much all of the public cloud on-ramps connect to that data center as well. It's also one of those data centers that's 100% run on renewable energy. A lot of organizations have initiatives within their organizations that they want to use green power. So all of the workloads that we put there all run under 100% renewable energy. And most importantly, lowest risk from natural disaster. It's in what we call the availability zone 1, which means it's not subject to fires and floods and things of that nature. So the things that may impact, such as what happened in Houston earlier this year, won't happen here. So, next slide, please. So what are the applications we run there? So as a cloud service provider, we realize not everyone's a Microsoft house, not everyone's a VMware house. So we support, as a cloud service provider, Microsoft, VMware, VeloCloud for SD-WAN access, Veeam for our backup services, and Zadara for their Z Compute and Z Storage and Z Network. This gives us one of the most flexible IaaS type of environments because we can pretty much offer any type of hosted environment that someone needs based upon their application. If it's based upon OS requirements, we can meet that. Also, if they've gone to the public cloud, maybe they're using things in with S3 type of storage and AWS, we can bring them back in and give them AWS compatibility with that S3 storage to still leverage what they may have done already for their public storage, our public cloud. Also, from a storage standpoint, we've been a Zadara partner for over 3 years with their storage as a service with the VPSAs, which allows us to be able to offer out to organizations shared storage as they need it. And as Doug's mentioned, not only in our cloud, but also on site for those organizations that may want to look at replacement or displacement of current SANs on site. We can also do that and then mirror the two together, as well as any of the other Zadara partner locations, which we'll talk about with the Federation. One of the key things that goes hand in hand with storage is backup. So we offer backup as a service, disaster recovery as a service through our partner Veeam. And a lot of that goes back to people may have loads on site that need to be backed up, and not only backed up, but backed up off-site to a cloud and be able to run that should they have an issue. But most importantly, protect their workloads against ransomware and other types of disasters. So next slide, please. So one of the key things, what makes us different, we're US based. All of our staff are English speaking. They're highly trained professionals that understand hybrid cloud. And hybrid cloud really is a mix of what may be on-premise to the public clouds, and that in the middle that has a very special customization or highly flexible environments. All of our services come with a white glove setup and implementation, so you don't have to become a cloud expert. And they all come with 24/7/365 support, which that in and of itself in today's world, when you look at some of the support elements, has a lot to offer. We also understand that organizations need to support all their workloads, and that's not everything fits in a Hyper-V world, not everything fits in a vSphere world. So there is this mix of having legacy apps as well as just newer apps that they want to either put to a particular OS or methodology of how they back it up and how they restore it. We also understand a lot of people have gone to the public cloud side. They put things up in AWS, they put things up in Azure, and a lot of that was the intent of we're going to do it for X price and it's going to be a lot lower. When they finally get there, they find out based upon how things run and what requirements are in place, it may be more expensive than what they originally planned on. Support may not be at the level they were expecting, and management may not be ideal. So we're seeing a lot more customers go back into this boomerang effect, coming back in saying, what can we do? What are our options? Hence our hybrid cloud solutions based upon all our various platforms is what gives us that ability to maybe get back to the original planned expenses or less than that to be able to provide the services you're looking for. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Doug. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Great overview. I love the how our companies are so interwoven when we talk about understanding the organizations and the repatriation of AWS. You're talking to customers every day We have a lot of them on the phone today or on the call today, and we're going to talk a lot about that third bullet point as we move a little bit forward. Let's go ahead and introduce Zadara a little bit. We're a 10-year-old company. We've got over 300 plus clouds out there today. It's funny, you were talking about the exascale. I think I'm going to start talking about, we're close to a third of an exabyte out there in the world. We're about 300 petabytes today. So we've definitely populated the world, if you will. When I built this slide about 10 years ago, it was basically, there was one little flag in Virginia where the Technology Depot flag is over there on the right, and on the right part of the US. And it wasn't a very interesting map. It was just one little flag. And now over 10 years, we've populated over 300 plus clouds. A lot of good quality customers have populated these environments. And so when we talk about edge, let's talk a little bit about, you can follow my mouse here a little bit. We put a flag up on the other side of the Peruvian mountains at a mining operation. So the mining operation wanted to have an edge cloud. There was no internet, there's no anything there, but they wanted to have cloud as a service or compute and storage as a service. So we basically were able to ship out to the mountains in Peru. That we also have a part of that company is up in the central part of Canada, also very edgy type of solutions up in there. So some of these are edge, some of these are large manufacturing facilities. And we'll talk more about this as well as we move forward. We're also delighted that Formula One racing team, Alfa Romeo racing team, I don't know if anybody out there is into Formula One. I'm just kind of starting because of this relationship, and I'm finding it fascinating to watch them on Sundays. But basically, they have chosen us as the Zadara as the official cloud supplier for the Alfa Romeo racing team. And you can imagine all these F1 Formula One cars today, there's a lot of telemetry, there's a lot of data that's inside there. Think of a Formula One car as an Internet of Things, and basically it's trying to tell us all kinds of things that's going on inside it, the heat and the pressure and the speeds and all that other stuff. So all that is basically being uploaded to a cloud where they can analyze it and basically run the race a little bit better next week. So we're delighted to have this slide here, and Kimi is one of the premier drivers for that team. So let's talk about a little bit about what the heck is going on. And so this is sort of Doug's clipping service, if you will, after speaking to lots and lots of customers, speaking to lots of partners. I kind of have the pulse on what's going on in the industry today. And as Brian said earlier, one of the big things that we see, now maybe you're seeing it, maybe not, but what we're seeing is a lot of people jumped into the cloud and they brought some of their dev and their test and some of their applications in there, of course. And then they started to move some of their production in. And because of various reasons, it could have been a cost, could have been unpredictable performance, could have been a lot of different things. They found that some of their applications were not a good fit for the hyper clouds, if you will, the large clouds. So we're seeing a lot of people either repatriating back to either a co-location facility, an MSP facility, or maybe back into on-prem. And we'll ask a polling question here in just a moment to sort of help us with that a little bit. So that's sort of what the heck is going on, number one. The second one is people are moving from CapEx to OpEx. Right now, every time I do polling, we're seeing about 50 to 60% of people have already moved a fair amount of their resources over to an OpEx model. We think that's great. If you look about the car industry, there are more cars that are out on lease than there are on purchases today. We're going through exactly the same thing here with storage. But the nice thing is that if it's a truly as a service, which very few are, we'll talk about that in a moment, but if very few are completely as a service, you can scale up, you can scale down, you can do all kinds of things that you would want to do here. Needing cloud services closer to the source of the data, like that mining town in Peru, they couldn't handle the latency, they couldn't handle a lot of the things that edge environments bring to bear. So we wanted to basically bring the services to those edge configurations. The public clouds can't do that, so we basically want to address that audience a little bit differently. As Brian said, he's got a team of excellent engineers and sales folks and so forth. Utilize a local partnership or local relationship. Even if you don't know Brian today, Working with a smaller MSP team sometimes will really behoove you. You're not just a simple number. You're not just trying to go through 15 levels of voicemails and so forth. You can get a human. You can get somebody that will answer your questions and become the cloud specialist that you're looking for. So work with a team you respect. And then the last thing is needing to keep your IT resources current at a reduced cost. Move to new technology when the timing is right. We're going to talk about that as we move forward. So stick tight. We've got a lot of things that we want to talk about here, but I'm going to bring up the first polling question here for you folks. So get ready with your mice, and I'm going to go ahead and launch this one. Okay, here we go. Where do you deploy most of your IT resources today? So do you deploy them in hyperclouds like AWS or Azure? Do you deploy them at MSP locations like Brian and Technology Depot? Do you provide them on premises, or do you use co-location sites? So go ahead and start clicking on those questions. I see some answers coming in, some interesting answers. So I'm going to give you just another few seconds. Things are still moving around. I can watch the responses coming in. And very interesting. Okay, all done, all clear. Wait for, still moving. All right, everybody, looks like everybody found their keyboards and mice. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll down. And I'm going to go ahead and share the results. Where do you deploy most of your IT resources? Number one was on premises. So we still have a huge on premises market here today. If you are on-prem today and you went to a cloud presentation, you'd say, you know, Doug, I can't move everything to the cloud for all kinds of reasons, security, or this is the way we've done it, or whatever. But in this presentation, I'm going to take the storage as a service and compute as a service, and I'm going to bring it to you on premises. Okay, so I'm going to bring it to your data center, but get all the enjoyment of a full cloud experience. If we look at the other two, MSP and co-locations is mixed, 17-17, and we have a very light AWS and Azure crowd out there today, about 8%. So that tells us a lot right now about who we have on the line, and also you now have an opportunity as you look to the right and the left. If you were basically in the same classroom, you would basically look to the right and look to the left, and you would see who basically is doing some of this. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down that poll. We'll have a couple more coming up before we get to the end here. So those are the things going on. Let's talk a little bit about the Technology Depot and the product powered by Zadara that Brian brings to you folks. So I'm going to go back 10 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about the genesis of this whole product. This was the first in my 44 years of being in the industry. This is my first company, and when I started with this 10 years ago, where we created the business model before we created a product. And what that means is that there's an awful lot of storage as a service and compute as a service products out there today that were sort of fitted into a as a service model. They really didn't have inside their genetics, inside their DNA, they didn't really have the as a service, the cloud built into it. So let's talk about the far left-hand panel here. Enterprise grade performance and security. That's pretty much table stakes today, is it not? I have to have enterprise grade performance and enterprise grade security in order to even get your business to start with. I've got to have solid state drives and hard drives. We are one of the few companies out there that still believe that there's a mix of solid state and hard drives, rotating drives, that basically can be put together. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So a mix, in-flight and at-rest encryption, snapshot, mirroring, highly available systems, all these things that you've been using for probably 20, 30, 40 years is in there. So I can't start without having a really cool product for compute and for storage. Now, if I go to the middle tile, remember, business model was created first. We said inside this product, I wanted to basically adopt itself easily to on-prem, co-location, and a public cloud. Same exact product, doesn't change. I want to be able to scale it up and scale it down. And I want to be able to see what I'm using and only pay as you go by the hour. So I know everything that's going on by the hour. The product tells me what it's doing by the hour, and I can charge you accordingly. I can do hardware upgrades. We have had a public cloud running in the East Coast of the United States, connected into AWS as what we call cloud adjacent. I'm going to explain that term in just a moment. We've had that running for about 10 years now, and we have never taken that cloud down to do any upgrades. And we've gone from, I was talking to one of my peers the other day, we've gone from 200 gigabyte SSDs to 7.6 terabyte SSDs, 200 gig to 7.6 terabyte without having to take anything down. It's all been built into the product, the ability to upgrade, put in new storage nodes and disks and networking devices, and basically do this rolling upgrade concept. Got to be built into the product. And we also have to have this OpEx model. And off to the right-hand panel, we're going to look at this management. I can't have 300 plus clouds all over the world without the product being smart enough to tell me when something needs to happen. Proactive support, migration, upgrades, all the things, the reporting and the alerts and all those other things have to be into it. So if I look at this, I say we haven't forgotten a darn thing. Inside the business model, we wanted to bring storage as a service, which sounds very, very simple, storage as a service, but inside the product, there had to be genetics and DNA built in to really pull this off appropriately so you get the maximum amount of service to your folks, to your company, to your applications. So these are the three panels. I love to kind of explain a little bit about the genesis. And if I do that right, I'm going to basically endear myself or attract myself to some pretty cool companies. NASA, if you're looking at the assembly building in Kennedy Space Center, the assembly building, that's where we're sitting. We're sitting right there. We're overlooking the SpaceX launch pad. And basically, they wanted to do compute and storage as a service because they're constantly growing and contracting, and they wanted to basically have it in there. Ancestry.com. With all the imagery and all the scanned work that we're doing there. Verizon, I'll talk about that in just a moment. Omnitrax, GPS, long haul truckers that are basically doing all the GPS work for truckers, and many, many stories here that we could talk about in a one-on-one call if you choose. And that's what the call to action will be all about. If we want to set up a call, what are we gonna return this with? And we'll talk about that as we move forward. So let's define some terms here. Cloud Connect Z Compute, Cloud Connect Z Networking, and Cloud Connect Z Storage. So what these are is three different storage as a service, compute as a service, and network as a service identified by this icon right here. And we're going to be using that icon as we move forward. And so it's broken into, I'll talk to the storage here in a moment. This is our Z storage piece, block, file, and object. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about our Z compute in more detail. And we'll talk about the Z networking as well. So all this is ready for you right now. If you're a switch customer on the line here, like I said, I have a lot of customers on the call here today. If you're a switch customer, then you're just as simple as calling up technology, the Technology Depot, calling up Brian and saying, hey, I would like 100 terabytes. I'm in switch. I'd like to do storage as a service for 100 terabytes. And within minutes, you can have 100 terabytes presented into your hardware in switch. It's up there and running. Maybe you're running on a compute and you want more compute without having to buy it. No CapEx here at all. And we're going to get into more detail on some of these use cases as well. So that's really kind of the setup of the terms of Z Compute, Z Networking, and Z Storage under the Cloud Connect hybrid solutions model. So let's talk about Z Compute. Why would I want Z Compute? It's a good question. Everybody out there is probably using some form of virtual machines or VMs or whatever you call it. Maybe you're using a hypervisor as well. Well, you had to buy the hardware in most cases. Maybe the license itself to run the software might be a subscription model, but you had to buy the hardware. So what we're saying here is inside your data center or inside switch or inside another public site that's out there, which I'll talk about the federated edge here in just a moment, you now have the ability to do self-service compute provisioning. You can spin it up, you can spin it down, you can grab as many cores and as much memory as you want. And you now have the ability to pay for the virtual machine as you go. You can run standard Microsoft or Linux licenses on that or operating systems. And if you happen to be one of that 8% that was on this call, that was AWS, we also adhere to the complete EC2 compatibility API. So if you've spent a lot of time writing your applications into Amazon's EC2 work frame, work set, we have those APIs, so you can basically remember that repatriation. Maybe you're not as happy with AWS as you thought you would be, and maybe you want to repatriate back to Switch or back to your data center or whatever. A lot of elements here that will really help you scale in an OpEx manner, which is what most people want. So if I hit the next slide, all I do is I go to San Diego, or Switch, I should say in this case. Brian's got offices in San Diego as well. But if I go to Switch and I click on, I create an account, so I have to have an account, of course, for security. And I click on one of their regions, and this is the one in Vegas. And I click on that, and I put in the name of the account and the compute that I want, and I select how many virtual machines I want, and I click, click, click. And now suddenly in Switch, I have 10 virtual machines running with 4 cores and 2 gigabit of or gigabytes of memory. Okay, so it's very easy to create something we call the Z compute. Now, once I hit the go button here, I'm going to put it somewhere. And this is really one of the money slides here for you folks, is I can put it in a co-location like Switch. I can put it in an MSP facility like one of the other ones that Brian has. I can put it in other partners, and I'll talk about the federated edge in a minute. And I also have the ability to put it on-prem. I think 58% of you folks said that you still had a lot of on-prem presence. So I can put it wherever I want. The whole concept of this session is don't compromise by having to put your compute and your storage where you don't think it'll serve you the best. That's really what this is all about, is kind of not compromising from that concept. So now I have the ability to run my applications pretty much anywhere on the planet that I want within a very short millisecond of latency, or very low latency, because I'm now putting it in the edge. Here's that place in Peru, and they put in their Z compute in the Peruvian mountains up over the summit. So that was the compute part. Now let's add the storage piece to this. So Cloud Connect Z storage. So here, very similar look and feel of the slide, is when we designed this product back in 2011, we said we want to adhere to all the media types, hard drive and SSD. What's hybrid, you think? Well, hybrid is a hard drive using SSD as a caching layer. So now sometimes I can get away with putting in a lower cost disk, depending on the use case, but using SSD caching up front. It's really, really smart to be able to squeeze up every nickel that you might have to spend. Now, over to the right, we're going to say that we wanted not to, for you, the customer, to have to buy the best in breed for block and file and object and have 3 different silos or 3 different pieces of equipment to manage, because that's just going to take more time for training and development and spares and contracts and purchase orders and all that other stuff. So what we said when we designed our product is we're going to have inside this Z storage, we're going to have block, file, and object all running independently within this architecture. Now stick with me. I'm going to explain multi-tenant architecture with a single tenant experience. And if you don't know what that means, then you're going to stay tuned here for just 2 more slides, or 1 more slide, and I'm going to get into that. Okay, so we have block, file, and object. We have companies like NASA, like Ancestry, that needed to share their file system across an NFS and a CIFS. Now that's pretty commonplace today in an on-prem solution, a CapEx solution that you may already have. But when you go to the public cloud, specifically with AWS perhaps, their NFS product and their CIFS product, FSX and EFS, are 2 different products, so they can't share the same data set. So they're 2 unique products. I can't bring that together. So our smartness, our genesis of this was that we wanted to be able to have block, file, and object all running together. But where are we going to put it? We're going to put it in colos, data centers, or in the cloud. So I go back to Switch. I click on the same interface, but now I'm going to create a storage array and an object storage. And I click, click, click. And now, voila, I have a VPSA, virtual private storage array, that Brian alluded to up front. I have a VPSA that's running object storage. I have one that's storage arrays for NFS and block storage. All the same array, but running the different things that you want it to do. So we can customize this. So as soon as I hit the go button, the patented software that Zadara has written goes to work. And it says, okay, now let's figure this slide out a little bit. We got a few minutes on this slide, so stick with me here as well. So here is customer one, and they clicked on a 400 engine. That means they're going to use 4 cores in our software-defined storage stack, our SDS stack up here. We got some storage nodes for you technical-minded folks. We have storage nodes, we have cores, we got memory, we got cache, all kinds of stuff up here. So here, this particular customer chose 2 active cores and 2 standby cores by simply selecting a 400 engine. You do that through this interface right here by creating your VPSA. So they also selected 4 SSD drives. So they want high performance, 150,000 IOPS perhaps. They want high performance and they want it to run really fast. Now, I promised you I'd tell you the Verizon story. The Verizon story was that they came to me about 6 years ago and they said, Doug, I would like to go to a public cloud, but the answer that I keep asking the public cloud companies is, do you know where my data is? You all may be chuckling here a little bit. If you go to a hyper cloud, you end up in these large storage blobs or these big storage pools, and everybody's sharing thousands of drives. So now if somebody moves in on the same set of drives that you happen to be on, you're going to end up with something called a noisy neighbor syndrome. And we said, that's bad. 10 years ago, we said, that's bad. We've interviewed enough companies and analysts to know that's bad. So Verizon came to me and said, do you know where my data is? And I said, yep, you selected 4 drives. I know physically, not virtually, but I know physically where those drives are. Those 4 drives are in rack number, blah, 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 and there they are. I said, why do you ask? And they said, well, we don't want noisy neighbors. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that if a drive fails, we, under our SLA to our customers, we have to have that drive returned to us and shredded. And in a large hyperpool or storage blob, they don't know who's actually running on any drives because all the data is distributed everywhere. So in our case, we have a contract with Verizon where we can pull that drive out, ship it back to them, and they can basically turn it into dust. They can destroy it. So we were the only players in a public domain, a public environment that could provide them with that level of detail on where their actual storage is. We also know that detail for cores and memory and cache and things like that. So that's a really good multi-tenant architecture, single tenant experience. That's what our patents are. That's how we were able to get this cool technology 10 years ago patented for customers like you. Okay, now let's go down to the middle tier. Remember I said we have this hybrid tier, hard drives plus cache? Well, it's another 400 engine, so we have 4 cores, 2 active, 2 standby, but we chose 10 drives in this case, 10 physical drives for this customer, of course. And so now this is going to be for NAS application, and that NAS application can get away with hard drives and cache. And now I have object storage, and the object storage down here is basically they chose a ZOS engine or a Zadara object storage engine and 6 drives. So all 3 of these could be different companies, of course, or if it's in your data center on-prem, this could be different departments. If you're a legal firm out there, it could be a chain of custody where each VPSA has to be in a different, or each data set for cameras or legal forms or whatever, has to be in a different VPSA for chain of custody perhaps. So isolation, single tenant experience, but I enjoy this multi-tenant architecture, so I only have one thing to manage. So now that I hit the go button, the question I'm going to ask you folks, if I was in a classroom, I would say, where am I going to put it? And you would now chime in and say, hey, Doug, you can put it in Switch, which is who we're premiering today for Brian's company. We can put it in an MSP, or we can put it in something we call cloud adjacent. Now, I didn't want to forget our AWS and Azure and Google partners. So basically, we can put our storage, which we have across the world, we can put it within 1 millisecond of AWS or Azure or Google, and we use their products to connect into Z storage. So I can use Direct Connect or ExpressRoute or Partner Interconnect. So AWS are great partners of ours, as is our Azure, as is Google, but there may be some reasons. Maybe this customer over here wants to talk to AWS and Azure basically with the same chunk of storage without actually having it in their facility. So we call that cloud adjacent. And we have the ability to do that. And it's running, let's say Ashburn, Virginia, it's running in an Equinix facility about a mile away, which is less than 1 millisecond to be able to do that. So that's a great story. I can put the storage anywhere, of course, on-prem, if you're one of those 58%. But look what happens here when I introduce Z Compute. Z Compute next to Z Storage anywhere you want it is exactly what we're going to now introduce as our edge solution. So our edge solution says you can put it anywhere you want, and you now have a complete OpEx model for your compute package and your storage. You can do file to Microsoft, and you can do block to Linux, and you can do object to HTML or HTTP. You can do whatever you want now to be able to access this storage from wherever you need to. Brian talked about his big networks across the country. That will serve you extremely well when you basically do using his networking capabilities in and out of some of his facilities. So that is a great opportunity here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up another polling question to make sure that everybody's sticking with me here. So pick up your mice. Here we go. Ready? List the reasons that you considered when you're looking at private or public cloud migration. So if I was to migrate my data between one of these data centers or back from the cloud or whatever, what are the things, you can click all you want, but what are the things that you think are most important when migrating data between sites or clouds or on-prem or whatever? So I know you're taking a little bit of time to read through this. Maybe the agility of IT resources, OpEx business model, technologies that never grow old, lower cost overall. Let's see, and like I said, this is going to add up to more than 100%, of course, because everybody's choosing more than one. Okay, I see everything kind of slowed down here. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Everybody done? Hands away from the mice. Off we go. Okay, so let's see what we got here. 75% said that when people are considering this, so let's build a little case study here. If I'm migrating away from AWS perhaps, or migrating out of perhaps a site to another site, one of the big instigators here is going to be the overall cost. Is it going to cost perhaps less than where I'm at right now? Because that's a big reason why repatriation is really taking force out there. Technology that never grows old. We call that storage immortality, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second, so stick with me here. Got about 23 minutes left for you folks. OpEx business model and the agility of on-demand storage or on-demand resources are both coming in at 42%. So great information. Again, for all you folks on the line, this is really pretty good information that you're getting real time to be able to see if you're in the thick of it with other customers that are basically sitting in the virtual classroom with you. So I talked a little bit about the federated edge, and so what we're going to be doing here is Brian, as well as hundreds of other global partners, are going to be standing up these facilities like we did in Switch, and they're going to be standing it up all over the world. So if you happen to be in an area on this call that Brian doesn't have, Brian doesn't have direct resources in, then what he'll do is he'll partner with one of our partners, and he'll basically have this concept of having both compute and storage wherever you happen to need it. Now, I'm just showing the map would be pretty cluttered if I put everything out there, but all I'm showing, remember that icon I represented here, that icon represents compute, networking, and storage as a service. So all FE zones contain identical IT stacks with self-serve provisioning, normalized partner requirements to offer seamless global edge experience. So if you happen to be in Ohio, or you happen to be in San Diego, or you happen to be in Kentucky, chances are we have something right around the corner from you. We even have an up in Alaska, and we're setting something up in Hawaii soon as well. So anyway, just so you know, edge is alive and well here with companies like Zadara and TT Depot. So that's really comforting. Okay, got a few minutes left. Let's talk about some use cases. So see if, I always like to create use cases where you might look in the mirror and you might say, that kind of looks like me. So here I am, I'm running a company with engineering, design, some back office, things like that. I really want that data to be closer to the edge. I have a law firm that I did. They were doing a lot of cloud work, but they said, I want to have something where the lawyers don't have to wait for the data to get reclaimed, or the e-discovery documents doesn't take too long to bring them in and print them and take a look at them. So could I put some compute and some storage in Portland, Oregon, where I could basically get a little bit faster access speeds? And we say, of course. What will the cost be? Oh, it's going to be exactly the same as what you do in the public cloud. Ah, interesting. I love that. Now, could I do a DR copy or a backup outside my on-prem unit, my on-prem unit somewhere else? Well, the answer is absolutely. As Brian alluded to, he's a Veeam partner, so we can now do backup and DR to his facility and switch, perhaps, and that could be the core, if you will. And now, what happens if something happens over here in your data center in Portland? Well, not only are you going to be happy that your storage is alive and well, but there's also some Z compute over there, so you can actually resurrect your business over there as needed. So there's one use case there for you. Let's say that you're close enough or the latency is low enough for you to not put something on-prem, but you just want to use maybe VPN or networking to network into your data and basically use it as file shares, use it as a remote access point. It's just like the data was sitting right next to you, but basically it's going to be sitting a few clicks away. So maybe that's a use case for you. And then down here, we have offices and departments and maybe cameras. I love to talk about the chain of custody. Each VPSA can be a department or a squadron or an office or whatever, and all these cameras from the body-worn cameras might go onto a VPSA. So I know who logged into that VPSA. I have a paper trail. I know everything about it. So now I have this chain of custody. I might be doing that the same for offices and departments. Maybe I have login information for doors or whatever, and I want that to be very secure. So having this isolation or single tenant experience is something that very often really serves the customer well, because we can look back at that paper trail and see what's going on. Let's talk about the on-ramp technology. And everybody, I'm sure you're out there scratching your head going, well, let's say I want to move to switch, or I want to move to a data center, and I've got X amount of storage on-prem today, but I really do want to take advantage of the cloud capabilities here, but I don't know how to get there. So what this panel is showing is, and I just wanted to let you know, I put a $5,000 number out here, but I didn't put a data over here. This isn't a quote. I'm not saying that you can get X, whatever the amount is. I'm just putting, this is simply an example of stable pricing. I'm showing 5, 5, and 5 there. So I think you probably got me here. So what I'm going to do is all your data is here on-prem, and there's nothing at the Technology Depot. And then what I do is I start to migrate the data from on-prem over to Technology Depot. How long does it take you? I don't care. 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, it doesn't matter to me. But we're starting to migrate it over in a very, very risk-free environment. And I'll show you the next slide, the actual physical piece. So now I've moved half of it over. Well, if I was paying $5,000 for a little bit here or all here and none there, I'm going to pay the exact same amount for half here and half there. And now as I've moved over, the pendulum swings all the way, and I've moved everything over to the TT Depot, I now am paying, oh look, $5,000. So I'm basically looking at what you're consuming, and then I'm basically charging you appropriately. Now, how does this work from an architectural perspective? So here I'm calling this hydration to the cloud, or hydration. Kind of using a little bit of the cloud nomenclature here. So here I have primary storage, could be whoever, I don't care. Could be an old EMC VNX, or it could be a compellent, or it doesn't matter to me, 3PAR. So there are lots and lots of tools here. Brian's team can help you with mirroring tools or rsync or robocopy. And we're gonna, the first jump, if you will, to the pond, to the cloud pond, the first jump is basically to move application by application over to VPSA that I put in your data center on your behalf. So I put it on your dirt inside your data center, and you're going to now spin up a VPSA by application, by use case, by work group, by whatever. Doesn't matter to me, and you'll start to migrate the data over. You'll then start to test that data and say, how does the Z storage work in my environment? How does it work with SQL? How does it work with NFS? How does it work with CIFS? Oh, that works pretty darn good. I like that. I'll go ahead and declare this as a victory, and then I'll stop using it over here and I'll start using it here. That's my first bump on the road. I'm going to remount my data to the new storage, just like you would if you're doing a technology refresh. Same exact process. Now that you're happy with the results, we don't care about this device anymore. We're running our business here, but remember, we're in your site still. Then I'm going to turn on my native mirroring, and I'm going to start to mirror the data over to the technology depot. And I'm going to do it by application, or I'm going to do it however you wish. It doesn't matter to me. We're going to do it over here. And then we're going to start testing like we did over here. We're going to start testing it over here on Z Compute and Z Storage. And we'll say, oh, the SQL database runs pretty good over here. And NFS and SIFS works pretty good over here. Everything's working great. So what I do is application by application, I break the mirror. I start production over here. And once I've moved everything and I no longer need this, I've tested that it all works, I now just simply I have you ship the Z storage back to us, and you've just used it for, I call it the kind of the lily pad. You've kind of stepped on it and then you've moved on to something else. Doesn't have to be all or nothing. You could keep half of your storage running here and half there. You could keep it all running here and use this for just DR. I'm giving you choices. And that is the real fundamental key here, is I'm giving you choices to start to put your toe in the water for OpEx and those kind of things. So now, looking at this use case, I'm going to bring up the last polling question here for you. So regarding this on-ramp use case, are you seeing any of the following? Moving to a cloud and don't want to purchase the extra hardware. So are you saying, I don't want to purchase the extra hardware to move to the cloud? Does that come up? You like stable pricing regardless of the location of the data. You need an as-a-service IT solution closer to the data or the edge, or moving to the cloud will offer you the OpEx pricing and agility. Somebody ought to be talking about pricing, because I know the previous poll, everybody was all over the pricing as well, or a bunch of you were. So go ahead, pick up your mouse, and let's go ahead and start clicking. You guys are still out there. I appreciate that. I sit here from my desk in Florida and wonder if everybody's still in tune with this session, but it sounds like everybody's kind of hanging with us here, so I really do appreciate that. So, all right, are we done? Oh, things are still moving around. As soon as I said that, somebody's clicking, and we're choosing all that apply, so it could be a lot more than this. Okay, poll's been open about a minute. Let's go ahead and close it down. Let's go ahead and show the results, see what we got here. Moving to the cloud will offer you an OpEx pricing and agility. Agility, pricing, pay what you use, pay only for what you use, scale up, scale down, make it big, make it little. That really is starting to resonate with you folks. You like stable pricing regardless of the location of data. The teeter-totter effect is working for you folks. I need an as a service a little closer to the edge, and then moving to a cloud that you don't want to purchase the hardware on site. So it sounds like we got a pretty good mix here of folks that are really seeing some value in this use case that we talked about. So remember this when maybe we reach out, or maybe we have a conversation with you folks. So we're going to finish up here, a couple more slides, and then we're going to talk about the call to action. But we got one more use case here. You guys have stuck with me for about 48 minutes. Certainly do appreciate that. So everybody's talking about ransomware and object lock and how do I recover? So we fit with the Technology Depot and Veeam and Zadara. We fit like dovetails. Everything works extremely well. Now, Veeam has created this notion of 32110. It's an easy way to remember it. It's called the Veeam zip code, if you will, but it's an easy way to do it. 3 different copies of the data, 2 different media types, 1 which is offsite, 1 is immutable, and 0 errors when we recover. I read a brief that the University of Texas, I believe it was, said that 50% of all backups cannot be recovered, or you cannot recover your business. If you haven't tested your backup in a while, you probably should be, because University of Texas says 50% won't work. So we want to make sure that we're testing those. So if I remember my story from the different tiers, multi-tenant architecture, single tenant experience, I want to basically share with you the different tiers. So here we have 3 different copies. I have a performance tier up here, probably SSD drives for backup. I have a capacity tier, probably hard drives. And then I have an object tier. So I've checked the box. I got 3 copies. Different media types. I've got block and I've got object. Different media. 1 is offsite, clearly. This guy is offsite. I'm basically using Cloud Connect to write it over to perhaps switch. One is an air-gapped immutability. Well, our object storage supports S3 record lock immutability. So it can't be written to. If you say you cannot write to this data for 45 days, that data cannot be overwritten or deleted or whatever. That's how ransomwares come in, is basically they kind of put a little bit of a Trojan horse out there, and then they basically let it get backed up. So now you're completely vulnerable to anything that could happen. So here you couldn't overwrite this original backup. And then zero, I'm going to basically test that from time to time if you choose to do that. And we're going to basically test that to another VPSA to see if we can basically spin that up and running, get it up and running. So a whole package here, as much or as little as you wish. You could stop right here and just do a local backup and put us out there. You could stop right here and just do the immutability without having the second tier. There's a lot of different choices here that you can do. So if you haven't thought, I do teach a ransomware session with some of our partners. And so we can go into more detail there. I think we have some on our webpage if you wanted to look at some of that as well. So if you select the Technology Depot powered by Zadara, what will my day-to-day experience look like? So the first part is this highly available systems. If you remember my slide on multi-tenant architecture, software-defined service, we've built that so ruggedized that basically everything is redundant. We have redundant storage nodes and cores and cache and drives, and everything is redundant. So we're actually, we set out in 2011 to build a unit that was 29.999% uptime. And I'm really glad to say that over 10 years of empirical data and looking at all this, we get a report every month that we're actually at closer to 6 nines of availability, which is nothing as far as downtime goes. I think Amazon and some of the hyperclouds are around 99.99. They're about 4 nines right now, which is still very, very good in the industry, of course. But we also have this 100% credit basis. So it says our SLA says 100% uptime, or we basically pay back to contracts. So we'll credit you for any outages that are received. Thankfully, we have not had to do that much at all in our 10-year existence. So let me share a story from Salt Lake City with you. So I was up there talking to a gentleman. His name was Bob, and I said, "All right, so Bob, why am I here?" And Bob says, and I love to tell this story in a lot of my webinars. I said, "Why am I here?" And he says, "I own about 500 terabytes of network appliance." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "So why am I here?" And he said, "I'm only using about 250 terabytes of it." I said, "Okay, well, that's not great. It's, about 50% over underutilized, under provision." And I said, "So why am I here?" And he said, "I've been told that I have to do a technology refresh because they're end of lifing this product, and now I have to basically replace it." And I said, "Okay, so let me get this straight. Let me run it back. You bought 500 terabytes, you're only using 250 on a daily basis, and now you have to get rid of it all and buy something new, and you've only used about half of it." And he goes, "Yep, that's the net. I'm trying to get off of this conveyor belt of refresh, CapEx, CapEx. So I said, "Okay, so let me give you a better mousetrap here. I ship out maybe 300 to 350 terabytes. You consume 200, pay for 200. Consume 175, pay for 175. Consume 250, pay for 250. And we'll continue to watch your consumption because it's baked into our product, and we'll basically be able to see how much you're consuming." He said, "Perfect. That's exactly where I want to go. As my business changes, I want my storage consumption to change." And he said, "What do you do for technology refresh?" This is the year 4. And I said, "Well, see this yellow bar here? The yellow bar says that I'm actually going to charge you less than what you were previously paying for your consumption." And he said, "Well, how do you do that?" And I basically put this on the whiteboard for him. And I said, "Over time, spindles get more dense and lower cost, whether it be hard drives or solid state drives." So since 2013, we've gone from 1 terabyte drives to 14 terabyte drives, much more dense, at a lower cost per gigabyte. Solid state drives have gone from about 200 gigabytes down to 7.6 terabytes. And so the density has gone up, the price per gig has gone down. What we do over time is we basically will offer you the next generation of drive, and we'll migrate on the fly, and we'll be able to do that on the fly to move you over to this new technology. So I've brought some of my customers through the last 7 or 8 years through 3 or 4 different families of technology or generations without an outage, and in some cases a much lower cost, or twice the storage at the same price. So they wanted to get off of this wheel. Bob wanted to get off of this wheel of this. So we're never going to say that is end of life. You've got to get rid of it all, and we're going to sell you a CapEx. That would never happen in our environment. It would always be, whether it be storage nodes, networking devices, disks, whatever it happens to be, we would basically keep that fresh and new for your usage. 24/7, 365 management. The Technology Depot will take your call 24/7, and then with us kind of backing them up at Zadara, powered by Zadara, we'll back them up and we'll basically be able to provide whatever information we need to help you out. This product will alert us when your volume is maybe running out of room and you need to add more disk, and we'll do that on the fly during lights out hours. We'll basically add more storage without you even knowing it. So you literally can't run out of storage. It's going to give us alerts. It's going to give us this uptime, and we're going to have these smart people all over the country and all over the world that are basically ready to work with you. Our DevOps guys, aligned with Brian's guys and gals, basically second to none. They know more about clouds and this business than anybody else out there. So I've got a couple of questions that have come in. One of them question came in that said, Doug, you talked about multi-tenancy. Can I mix SSD drives and hard drives in the same VPSA? And the answer is yes, you certainly can. We're going to create 2 different pools, 2 different quality of service pools. There'll be a high performance pool in a VPSA called for SSDs, and then there'll be a capacity pool for hard drives. So each VPSA can have different capabilities, if you will. Another question came in while we were talking, and that question was, for mirroring, can I use the data at the DR site for test and dev? So if I'm basically mirroring to switch, but it's only a DR copy, can I use that data for perhaps machine learning or any type of marketing or collateral or things like that? And the answer is yes. You simply create a snapshot. It's a 0 capacity snapshot. You create a clone. It doesn't consume any storage whatsoever, and now you can mount those clones to any of your machine learning or any of your compute that you want to do there. So very, very easy to do that as well. And then the last question I have right now is, how long is it going to take to install and get me up and running if I choose to go on-prem? And the answer to that is between 30 and 45 days from your point of decision. You guys can be using this solution on-prem and maybe migrating it to Brian's site at Switch, or maybe just using it for the long term in your on-premises mode. So however you want, let's say 30 to 45 days from point of decision. So what we've learned today, if I've done my job, and the next slide is going to be the call to action, but if I've done my job, I've showed you that migrating data between clouds and data centers and colos is very, very easy. I've shown you how to convert CapEx to OpEx, because everything in the last 52 minutes or 58 minutes has been all OpEx. Needing the cloud closer to the source of the data. You need to have it in the Peruvian mountains and bring it up on a backside of a donkey. That basically could be the story for a very edge solution like up in Peru. Utilize an MSP location for DR and backup repositories. We talked about that. I think we nailed that one. And we need to keep our IT resources current at a reduced cost. That could absolutely be part of your future. So I'm going to turn this over to Brian. I think he's still there. And Brian, you want to talk about the next steps and what you're willing to offer these fine folks?
You bet. Thanks for presenting. And one of the things that we want to talk about is, like anything, people want to see, how does this really work? And so basically we're offering out to all those attended a ability to try it with a kind of a shrink wrap model of what are 2 or 3 servers that you want to try, put some storage out there and see how would that work. And with that, that'll come with 3 months of 2 months worth of usage, running on both the Z Compute, Z Storage, and Z Network. And so with that, to take advantage of that, all you have to do is reach out to Jenny. She'll get the connection set up with us to be able to have a conversation, see what your workloads are, what you're trying to do, and kind of assess how well that would work in your environment. So should be a good
Perfect.
offer.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Brian. And for anybody that's not live, that we're going to basically be sending this session out to people that will be getting the recorded session. This is alive and well. If you download or listen to this on-demand training, and say it's day one, but you're doing it in a couple of weeks and downloading it, we'll also honor this promotion, knowing when you downloaded it, or knowing when you went ahead and took a look at it. So this 10 business days is alive and well, even if you didn't make the training today. So with that, we're right at the top of the hour. Boy, we got it pretty darn close here. I want to thank everybody for joining. Brian, you can say goodbye to everybody if you wish, and
Thank you,
thank you
everyone.
so much, everybody.
Appreciate it.
All right, folks, have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.